I thought we were a happily married couple.
When the dream wedding doesn't lead to the perfect marriage.
I think there's a sort of element amongst men that once they've got married, they don't have to try anymore.
Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned.
The car was the first thing I did.
I drove it down to the town hall and put it through the stalls.
I found some WD-40 and put nice squiggly patterns all over absolutely everything.
It was so satisfying. It was like finger painting.
Revenge is really sweet.
Cheated wives speak out in Mistresses tomorrow at 10:05 on BBC One.
Hamish Macbeth.
Definitely means me.
Talk of the town.
That's Macbeth.
Clearly moving in the right direction.
Several Tory Euro rebels offered Mr Major support, raising the hopes of Tory whips that they might yet stave off an embarrassing reverse on European fisheries policy which threatens tomorrow, even though 17 Tories tonight signed a critical amendment. Labour hopes enough Tory Eurosceptics and fishing constituency MPs will abstain to do down the government, but some of its own MPs are away sick. Long-term, the Prime Minister's words indicate a Tory deal. If he keeps open the single currency option, then the Cabinet's Euro enthusiasts will back a referendum. Labour say if they win an election backing the single currency, they won't need one, but they're not ruling it out. Robin Oakley, BBC News, Westminster.
The Princess of Wales has decided not to spend Christmas with the royal family after all. Buckingham Palace said the change of plan had come from the Princess following a discussion with the Queen.
Christmas at Sandringham is something the Princess has endured rather than enjoyed for the past 2 years. For the sake of her sons, she spent Christmas Eve there, leaving after the church service on Christmas morning. It's been an awkward situation, played out in front of the crowds and cameras. Nevertheless, just 3 weeks ago, while she was in Argentina, it was announced that she would be joining the family for Christmas this year. The very fact that this was made public by Buckingham Palace was unusual and was taken as an indication that both she and the royal family were keen to demonstrate that her Panorama interview had not damaged relations irreparably. It'll be the second Christmas that the two young princes have spent without their mother. She stayed away in 1992 when she and Prince Charles separated. That she feels unable to put aside other feelings in order to share Christmas with her sons underlines her growing isolation from the rest of the royal family. Buckingham Palace officials are still insisting there's been no falling out or any pressure put on the princess. They say she's had a change of heart in the past couple of days, that the decision is utterly her own and that she's talked it over with the Queen. Her celebrity status assured, as shown once again in New York last week, the princess appears more determined than ever to assert her independence. And that, in turn, raises the question of how far away a divorce can now be. Jenny Bond, BBC News.
The panel set up to consider the removal of terrorist weapons in Northern Ireland has been meeting Sinn Féin in Dublin. The Sinn Féin delegates refused to discuss IRA weapons in isolation and urged the Commission to examine shooting incidents involving the security forces.
They work 12 hours a day on average, 48 hours of talks in 4 days, in Belfast and in Dublin.
I'm certain that out of all we've heard, there will be a basis for a report and a recommendation.
George Mitchell said they had already met people who indicated they were closer to paramilitaries than previously acknowledged, but he would go no further. Certainly Sinn Féin leaders today insisted they spoke only for Sinn Féin.
Yeah, we are prepared to speak about the IRA's position, but we're not speaking for the IRA. We're also prepared to speak about the position adopted by the British Army, by the UDR RAR, by the guns of the Loyalist Death Squad.
Senator Mitchell and his team then had 2 hours of talks at the Irish Foreign Ministry.
We are very impressed with the way they set about their task. They're an independent body, and we obviously now have to await their report.
But a reminder tonight that feelings still run high as 2 men leave a Dublin court free on bail. Nessun Quinlivan and Pierce Macaulay are wanted in Britain, accused of escaping from Brixton Prison. The extradition battle could take 18 months. Political leaders still have little to celebrate. Gerry Adams will meet the Northern Ireland Secretary in Belfast tomorrow, but the arms deadlock continues, at least until the international body reports next month. Leo Enright, BBC News, Dublin.
The first American troops have arrived in the Bosnian town of Tuzla. Another 20,000 US soldiers are expected to join the NATO-led force, which will police the Dayton Peace Agreement. The arrival of the combat force has been delayed by several days because of bad weather.
After almost 4 years of war and 4 days of dense fog, the Americans have made it to Bosnia. Flying from bases in Italy and Germany, these C-130 transport planes made the most of a break in the treacherous winter weather. With one landing on average every 20 minutes, they delivered the first contingent of one of the most publicized peacekeeping operations in history. American combat troops are now finally arriving in Tuzla to set up the headquarters for a mission involving over 20,000 soldiers. This is an army that has been ordered not to incur losses, and the highest priority is caution.
We're not going to do anything that's going to cause anyone any harm. We're going to do it safely and deliberately.
So you're not in a great rush?
No, not at all.
A new Bosnian chapter kicks off while another is being erased. These Swedish peacekeepers are abandoning the United Nations logo, in whose name they've conducted their impossible mission for the last 3 years. The new coat of paint comes with a NATO command. It's supposed to symbolize the greater commitment of the international community to keep the peace. It's the Americans who are the newcomers here, taken on a tour of their base by a Scandinavian soldier 2 days before they take over the reins. Although they've been eagerly awaited, the American troops know that they can take their time. They've come here not to fight a war, but to enforce a peace that seems to be holding even without them. Matt Fry, BBC News at the Tuzla Air Base.
Here, water companies have been told to keep hosepipe bans and other restrictions in force throughout the winter. The National Rivers Authority says that without a heavy rainfall this winter, there'll be shortages again in the summer.
Darwell Reservoir in East Sussex holds less than a fifth of the water it should. With normal rainfall, it takes a year to fill. Many others take 2 years. Around the country, there's plenty of surplus water, but getting it to the reservoirs means investing in new pipelines, and the NRA thinks some water companies are reluctant to part with their cash.
We want them to spend money on the schemes to take the water out of the river now to actually boost reservoir levels over the winter, so that next year we don't get the same sorts of problems as we've had this year.
I don't think we're gambling on rainfall at all. What we're doing is looking sensibly at the investment that we need to make sure we can guarantee water supplies. In the southwest, for example, we spent something over £400 million since privatisation to ensure there are adequate water supplies.
As Christmas approaches, last summer's hosepipe bans and water restrictions are still in force for a third of all English and Welsh water consumers. If rainfall now slips 20% below normal, Yorkshire, North West, Severn Trent, Southern and South West Water will be unable to supply all their customers. Unless it rains very heavily over the next few months, reservoirs like this up and down the country won't recover in time for next summer. The losers will be the water companies' customers, who face more restrictions and hosepipe bans. Richard Wilson, BBC News, Devon.
The Wall Street Stock Exchange has had its biggest one-day loss in 8 years. The Dow Jones Index has just closed down 101 points. Traders blamed the ongoing budget battle between the White House and Congress. The wreck of the world's first mechanical submarine has been discovered 60 feet under the Irish Sea. The steam-powered Resurgam was invented by a clergyman and sank in 1880 while being towed to Portsmouth for sea trials. The wreck was a chance discovery by a diver sent down to untangle a fishing net.
Off the coast of North Wales, beneath the Irish Sea, lies the wreck of an historic piece of naval history. In 60 feet of water rests the world's first steam-powered submarine, undisturbed in a watery wilderness for 115 years. Covered in barnacles, the Resurgam is barely recognizable. This is its distinctive pointed bow. 45 feet long, it sank in a gale in February 1880 while being towed from Birkenhead to Portsmouth, where it was to undergo sea trials. Over the years, there have been numerous attempts to find the wreck, but to no avail. Then, 6 weeks ago, an amateur diver trying to free snagged fishing nets discovered the vessel. Today, it was confirmed as the Resurgam.
When we got out on site, the water was unusually clear. I kitted up with my diving equipment, jumped over,
followed these traps of cables down towards the seabed, and there, halfway down, was a huge blanket of fish. And just on cue, they parted, I went through, and it's so simple. Resurgam was sitting there.
The Resurgam's inventor, the Reverend George Garrett, launched his craft in 1878, but despite having a revolutionary system for purifying the air of its crew, it received a lukewarm reception from the British Admiralty. Its discovery now, however, has brought a warmer reception from naval historians.
Not only is it the first British designed and built submarine that worked, it was also the world's first mechanical submarine.
Plans are now being made to raise the vessel. When it does leave the water, it will have lived up to its name. Resurgam is Latin for I shall rise again. Clive Myrie, BBC News.
The Bay News again tonight. Conditions at Britain's biggest women's jail are so bad that prison inspectors have walked out, calling them unacceptable. The prison's minister has admitted to a sorry state of affairs at Holloway. Newsnight is on BBC Two at 10:30, but that's all from the 9 o'clock news. Good night.
Good evening. Now the main stories from the Look North newsroom. A pub landlady has lost her bid to renew her licence after one of her customers drank himself to death. Mark Stirk choked on his own vomit at his home after a drinking session at the Bradford Hotel in Shipley. He was 7.5 times over the legal driving limit. Earlier today, a judge at Bradford Crown Court ruled that Mr Stirk had been served a gross amount of alcohol.
Friends of landlady Janice Dempsey angrily shielded her as she emerged from court. She'd been told she was unfit to hold a licence after 30-year-old Mark Stirk died after drinking at the Bradford Hotel pub in Shipley. He'd had the equivalent of 20 pints of lager. The Stirk family had this message.
Just hoping that there's a bit more respect for life and liquor in general, really. They both command respect. Let's hope there's a bit more given to each.
All landlords are legally obliged not to sell alcohol to customers who are overly intoxicated. Mark Stirk's family now hope landlords will be responsible.
Speaking earlier this evening, Terry Oates, president of the Northern Federation of Licensed Victuallers, said the magistrate's decision would have a good effect on landlords everywhere.
I think it'll have the right effect, and that's to warn all licensees and members of staff to be aware of this, and that it could cost them the livelihood for entertaining particularly habitual drunks or habitual drinkers. We're not in the game of serving these type of people. We're offering a service for people to come out and have a drink in a social convenience, not just to come out and stand there drinking out of proportion.
The long-term unemployed in Hull could have their benefits cut if they refuse to take part in a new government scheme being tried out in the city. The controversial workfare system offers 26 weeks of training to those who've been out of work for more than 2 years. Critics say the scheme will do little to get people back to work.
It's the long-term unemployed who are meant to benefit from this latest government scheme, but they will also be the first in the country to forgo part of their payments if they don't take part in work experience. The Prime Minister says it will act as a lifeline, but the unemployed in Hull today have reserved their judgment.
Don't give anybody a chance nowadays. Not when I'm getting £2 extra a day. That's not a chance, is it?
They'll give money in one hand, but they'll take it out your other hand. You know, and it's all a big con.
I think that having the possibility of their benefit being removed may in some cases be the only way to get them back into the habit of doing something useful, and that we think will help them and help their opportunity to get back to work.
This pilot scheme in Hull and in Maidstone in Kent is the government's answer to cutting spiralling costs, but reducing benefits has raised concerns.
And that's all from Look North tonight. We'll be back with a full roundup of the region's news and weather at 6:25 tomorrow morning. Now the national weather forecast with Penny Tranter.
Good evening. Pre-Christmas snow can be expected by the end of the week, especially in central and northern areas. In fact, on Friday we can expect that snow from the Midlands and Wales in the south through northern England into southern Scotland and Northern Ireland in the north. And some of that snow is likely to be heavy, especially over the high ground. And we'll keep you updated on this forecast over the next few days. At the present time, we have a blanket of cloud over much of the country, with a thicker swathe out to the southwest, bringing in a band of rain. And that will be edging into the southwest by dawn tomorrow, perhaps with the odd flake of snow over the higher ground. Elsewhere over England and Wales and Northern Ireland, we'll see overcast skies and really quite misty conditions too. But for Scotland, it's going to be clear and frosty, with temperatures down to -3°C, giving us icy stretches on many roads. Relatively mild down in the southwest, temperatures there around 3 to 6°C, and that due to that cloud and also rain brought about by this area of low pressure slowly nudging northeastwards through the next day or so. So it's going to be quite cloudy and dull, misty weather over southwestern England into South Wales, with some persistent rain turning to sleet and snow over the higher ground. For the rest of England and Wales and Northern Ireland, really quite dull and misty, and certainly that cloud will be thick enough to give us the odd spot of light rain or drizzle as it did today. On the other hand, for Scotland, a much brighter day, certainly some sunshine in southern and central areas, but a scattering of wintry showers from the word go for many northern and eastern areas. Perhaps a few of those showers with the brighter weather nudging into northern parts of England later on in the afternoon. For temperatures similar to Monday over many areas, around 5 to 8 in the south, but bitterly cold in the north, temperatures around 1 to 3°C in a quite strong north wind. On Wednesday, that cold air pushing into many central and northern areas, with a relatively mild air trying to push in from the southwest, with this frontal system caught in the middle, and that will be giving some rain in the far south, turning to sleet and snow over central and northern parts of England, with wintry showers in the north.
This is a lady quite unlike any other.
Britannia gets under your skin simply because she's very beautiful.
She's well travelled.
We've done 25 state visits on board her. So it's really rather a wrench to see her go.
Well kept.
The impression that Britannia makes when she comes in sets the tone for a visit.
And always well received. A lady with an extraordinary past and an uncertain future. Britannia, Wednesday, 9:30 on BBC One.
As controversial now as it was when it began, BBC Two peels away the layers of a peculiarly British institution in just over 10 minutes. The Page 3 story.
For king, for country!
It was a struggle for the new world. For the Indians, it was a fight for land. But for one man, it was a fight for much more.
Stay alive, no matter what occurs. I will find you.
He saved us. We were alive only because of him.
I'll have you beaten from this fort.
Daniel Day-Lewis stars in a network television premiere, The Last of the Mohicans. Friday, 9:30 on BBC One.
Cult fantasy film action now on BBC One as Christopher Lambert and Sean Connery battle through the ages in Highlander.